Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to be upcycling an old tote bag using some African fabric scraps. So let's begin. So I have this old raggedy tote bag that I'm about to upcycle because, I don't like how it looks and it's just raggedy. So we're going to get creative and see what we come up with for this tote bag. So as you can see, it's of small size. And I have a bunch of African scraps that I haven't used yet, and I figured, you know what, let me use this fabric because I love the print and I think it'll look nice as a bag. So now I'm just gonna figure out what pieces I'm gonna use for the body of the tote bag. And now I'm going to just take down some measurements. What I can see, they have sewn a 1/8 of an inch for the seams, but I'm gonna go with 1/4 of an inch for the African fabric. So I'm just taking down the measurements and I'm putting it on a piece of paper just to keep note. So I'm just measuring on the sides, and then I'm going to measure the bottom, and I'm also going to measure the straps as well and the length of the straps. So examining the bag some more, I'm seeing there's no seam on the bottom of the bag, but I'm going to most likely have a seam at the bottom as well on the sides. So here I am just placing the tote bag on a single layer of fabric, and I'm making sure it's straight and ready to go. So I'm taking my scissors and I'm going to cut a square. I'm gonna do 1/4 of an inch all around. Hey. I don't know about y'all, but I really like this music. I love this type of music. Like, what? Could dance all night with this type of music. Okay, so now that I've cut one block out, I'm gonna cut another one, and I found another scrap that might be big enough to cut out, but as you can see, the corner it's cut out, so I don't know if I can get away with that. But I came up with an idea to fix that. You see that? Nah, that is not, I can't have that. So what I'm gonna do is cut about maybe 3/4 of the actual square. So where I'm pointing my finger at is where I'm gonna cut the fabric that's on the bottom, and about 4 inches down is where I'll be cutting, because I'm gonna create a yoke. So there'll be like a top piece that I'll sew on. So as you can see, one side is a bit shorter, and that's why I'm gonna use a strip of fabric to compensate for that space that's left out. And that's what I'm doing now. I'm just cutting the excess fabric and sizing it up. And now what I'm gonna do is I've thought of creating fringes for the tote bag. So I took another strip of fabric and I'm just gonna start cutting out thin 1/4 of an inch strips of fabric. So you'll see that right now. So I'm just gonna be cutting out this whole thing, and I do want that detailing at the bottom, so that'll be shown at the bottom of the strips. So as you can see, I'm just cutting it out. And it didn't take that long either. It doesn't have to be perfect because I mean, you won't notice it, you know. So, um, I'm just gonna be cutting, and I'm cutting a lot just in case I need more. So, I just go straight across. You can use scissors or you can use a rotary cutter. I have a rotary cutter, but the blades are dull, so you know, I just decided to cut with the scissors, but later on I cut with the rotary cutter. So I'm gonna speed it up a little bit because I don't want y'all being here for like an hour watching me strip these things. So just going right down. Now I'm gonna let y'all enjoy the music. Okay, so I'm done with stripping those down, and now what I'm gonna do is set that to the side and work on the top portion of the um, tote bag, the yoke part that I was telling you about, and that's about 4 inches, and I'm just straightening it out and making sure all sides are straightened before I start sewing it. So here is the strip, and I'm gonna place it right side facing the right side of this tote bag, and I'm going to place pins, and this is just one side of the tote bag, and I think I'm gonna make it the back, and I'm just stretching it a little bit because it seemed to be a little shorter than the size of the tote. So I'm placing pins, and I just sewed 1/4 of an inch down straight stitch, and this is how it's looking. It looks good, and I'm thinking about top stitching it because I don't want the seams to be sticking out, and I don't know, I think it'll look good and neat if I top stitch it. You see, I don't want those seams sticking up, so I'm gonna sew 1/8 of an inch right on the top of the seam, and I'm gonna show you that now. So I'm on my sewing machine, I'm sewing a straight stitch, and I'm gonna go right down right next to that seam, 1/8 of an inch, and you want to do this slowly if you have to create a yoke, or with any top stitching you just want to go slow. So I'm going all the way down, making sure that I finger press as I go down so there's no bulkiness, and making sure the seams in the back are face downward. This is how the top stitching looks. Look at that. It's so clean and neat, just what I wanted. Bottom, and this is the top, and I noticed there's a rip actually on the front of the tote bag, and what I'm gonna do is create something there to hide that. It's no big deal, but I didn't notice that, so I'll fix it though. So what I'm gonna do with these strips of fabric is I'm going to place them at the bottom of the tote bag, and I'm gonna put it right sides of the strips facing the right side of the tote bag, and this is the front of the tote bag. So as you can see, that's the right side. I'm gonna flip it over so that once everything is sewn up, the right side of those strips will be like at the front, where the front of the tote bag is also. if that makes sense. Like the right sides of the strips is not going to be toward the back. So I'm doing it this way. And with some of the strips, I'm going to do like an uneven type look. I'm not going to do a straight type of fringe. It's going to be uneven. As you can see, some is going to be lower than others, some higher. That's how I want it. But you're free to do however you like, however you want. So I'm just going, making sure everything is filled up, all the spots is filled up, and then I'm gonna cut off the excess fabric at the bottom. And you want to leave some room at the sides also. Whatever seam allowance you're gonna use, you just want to leave that space empty. So make sure you push the fringe a little over to the side. So I'm going to lay the back portion of the tote bag on top of the front portion, and I'm going to pin the bottom. And I'm just going to pin a few because it's kind of weird that the fringes are in between, and I don't know, it's not going to, the pins are not going to catch all the strips, but I just want to put a few pins to hold everything in place while I sew. And when you take it to the sewing machine, you want to easily, carefully put it underneath the needle because you don't want the fringes to be flying all over, and no, it's just going to be a disaster. So just make sure you're easy with it. And I'm going straight down, 1/4 of an inch, straight stitch. And I'm put my tension to like 6 just so it can have extra, sturdiness. And the tension is, how tight the threads are. So that's what I'm doing. And here it is. This is how it's looking, guys. And it looks really good. I love it. This is how it looks. This is the front of the fringes, and that's the front portion. So look at that. Wow. So now after that, I'm gonna finish sewing both sides of the tote bag, making sure that all the fringes are tucked in, making sure that I'm not sewing over them, and I'm gonna just place some pins also. So after I sewed all the sides, I'm gonna show you how it looks. So this is it. This is how it's looking right now. Turned out really, really well. So now I have my tote bag, right? So what I'm gonna do is take my new tote bag and place the old tote bag inside, and the old tote bag is gonna play as a liner, if you will. And I'm just gonna put it right in, and it fit perfectly. It wasn't too big or too small. It fit just right for this size of the bag. So now how are we gonna stabilize this, right? What I'm gonna do is sew right across on the top. Simple as that. I'm gonna just fold over the raw edges of the African fabric, and I'm just gonna sew right around, and that's it. About maybe a eighth of an inch or 1/4 of an inch, but I'm thinking about eighth of an inch. And right now I'm measuring the straps, and I noticed that both straps are not the same length. One is like an inch off. So what I'm gonna do is make it 23 inches for both, because one is 21 inch and the other one is 22 inch. So I'm just gonna make it 23 inches in all. 23 inches long and about 6.5 inches wide. is what I'm working with for the straps. So when you want to find the half number, you just half the measuring tape, and then it'll give you open it back up and it'll give you your half your half number. So that's what I did. So I'll be cutting 3 1/4 for the 2 straps. I'm gonna cut this excess fabric there so I can have me a nice long rectangle to work with. So I'm gonna take my rotary cutter and I'm just going to eye it. I should have used a ruler to make a more straighter cut, but you know, I did what I could. And I'm just seeing it needs to be 3 1/4. So I'm gonna cut that wide strip in half, and now it's giving me 2 straps. I'm gonna double fold for the straps, which I'll show you how. So I have the straps here, and I'm going to firstly take the strap and place the strip over the strap, as you can see. See that? And I'm just gonna sew right next to the opening. And I'm gonna place a few pins just to hold the beginning in place, because after you sew the beginning it's gonna kind of follow that same it's just gonna fall in place. You don't have to keep folding it up, if you can understand what I'm saying. And I love the detailing of where it says wax. I don't know, it just gives you that vibe of African fabric. Like, this is authentic African fabric, and I want to make sure that it's shown. So at the bottom of the strap, I kind of just folded the bottom, the raw edge, and I sewed across. And now what I'm going to do is sew down the fold. So I'm making sure that it's nice and neat inside of the fold, and I'm going to sew right down. I'm going to go all the way down, and I'm going to do this for both straps. And you make sure that it's remaining folded. Okay, so this is the finished look. This is the finished result. I'm really pleased. I'm happy of how this came out. It looks so good. What a upcycle, right? Like this was a total tote bag makeover, and I'm happy with this. So this is the yoke at the back. This is the back of the bag, and it's that yoke that I installed and top stitch, and then this is the front of the bag. And what I'm going to do, remember that slit? I'm going to fix that right now. You're about to see what I'm going to do. So I still had more scraps left, which annoyed me because, you know, I was thinking of just using all of it. But yeah, I have this scrap right here, and I'm creating a flower. And I'm pretty sure you know what I'm about to do. I'm gonna sew it right on top of that slit because I am not gonna be looking at that ugly slice through the fabric. So I think it's a nice little finishing touch. And I'm going to place some pins to just hold it in place, and I'm going to hand stitch it. So listen, you can create anything with your scraps. Do not throw them away. Sometimes I think about throwing all my scraps away, but if they're usable, try your best. Think of something that you can create with your scraps and then throw the rest out. So I doubled my thread, and I'm using a needle, and I'm going to just go through it. You can't really see the stitches because I'm trying to sew invisibly and trying to sew underneath the flower, sorta. And yeah, I'm just gonna go around making sure I get those parts where it's sticking out. And this is the final results, guys. What y'all think about this? I really love this bag. And if you've seen other videos on my channel, this fabric was from a garment I made, an African garment I made, and I decided to use the scraps from that garment or from that project to create a bag. So thank you all for watching. I hope you guys create something fabulous out of your scraps and have fun, and I'll see you in the next video.